One of the consequences of being a high volume reader like I am is that the sheer quantity of what you read can lead you to find some really good books, but then you kind of forget about them in the overall noise of what you're consuming. One book that I really, really enjoyed when I read it over 4 years ago was called Late Bloomers by Rich Karlgaard, who, if I understand right, went on to be the publisher of Forbes magazine. Even though he graduated from Stanford with high honors, then he went on to work some pretty otherwise remedial blue collar jobs. He worked in the kitchen, things of that nature, and then finally was able to put his skills to good use and become successful in his field, but not immediately after he had gotten that Ivy League education. Is Stanford Ivy League? I know that you can kind of use Ivy League as a term for like fancy higher education, but I know that specifically the Ivy League is a certain list of schools. I don't know if Stanford's in it, whatever, doesn't matter. But the book was highlighting a problem where there were certain classes, I guess, of families that were so obsessed with the idea of their children being almost, what's the right word here, prodigious in their accomplishments from a very, very early age, that they had to be a baby billionaire and stuff, that they were paying, I mean, we're talking like 5, maybe even 6 figures a year to get them into prestigious preschools and to get them tutors and to cram as much knowledge and potential and all this stuff into them from an extremely young age, that they would have no choice but to become amazingly successful and create something that would change the world. And boy, howdy, the amount of stress that that's got to put on a kid, I wouldn't be surprised if they just blew a brain vessel, a blood vessel in their brain, say brain vessel, from the amount of expectation put on them. Unless they're Asian, and then that's just normal, right? Judging by Stephen He's videos. But I digress. It reminded me of an article that I saw somewhere online a couple of years ago. The particulars of it are what stuck with me. There was a Silicon Valley boom in plastic surgery because people really wanted to be perceived as being younger because they wanted to be accomplished and successful, but they had to do it at a young age, or else it wasn't as impressive. Like you had to be changing the world by age 18. You definitely had to be creating something on the level of Facebook or some similar social media platform or internet application that would make you a billionaire and make you a household name. You know, like Zuckerberg, he stole Facebook and took it to the level that he did when he was like, 20 years old? Here's the problem. When you get an entire generation of 20-year-olds that think that they're going to be the next that guy, statistically, no, you're not going to be. But then you get these parents spouting champion stuff, saying, well, not with that attitude, and you got to be the one that doesn't quit, and blah, blah, blah. It can be kind of a mixed bag. Like, I had parents that encouraged me and believed in me, but there was also this kind of sense of like, well, if you're not batting it out of the park and making $10,000 a month by the time you're 22, you're obviously doing it wrong. And for a while, I felt like I was, and it was a big deal for me to drop out of college when I did. And I felt like I had to kind of justify myself to my mom and my brother, who were strong advocates for me staying in college. And boy, looking back, I think I definitely made my case for not doing that. But the Silicon Valley thing became especially difficult because there were guys that felt like they were old at 25 and weren't accomplishing things in their offices, and they were getting made fun of by the 22-year-olds coming in, and they were going in to get facelifts or Botox or whatever, and plastic surgeons were like, dude, you're 25, your facial features aren't even completely set yet. What the heck is going on? But they were panicked about it because they were trying to hold on to that youth, and they felt that if they weren't so tremendously successful before they turned 26, then they had utterly failed, and they were trying to buy time. I was reminded of this in a video by a guy named, his web handle is Joker. His channel is called Better Bachelor. He's in the larger peripheral circles of other channels that I watch, and every once in a while I'll see his videos pop up and I'll watch him. And he's one of those guys that for the most part, will say that he's culturally on my end of the spectrum, but he still has plenty of takes that I disagree with on very key issues, namely marriage, courtship, future, and all that. A lot of it is because his life experiences have been significantly different from mine, namely that he doesn't have any kids and he had a very bad marriage that ended poorly. And so in his 50s, he advocates for men not to get married. And he's very harsh on the current realities of the dating scene for single men. Now, I think the observable realities of the dating scene, he's spot on with the things that he's calling out. I just disagree very strongly with his solutions. Nevertheless, I understand how he came to his conclusions. But he's very critical of the dating app scene, the dating scene for young men, and especially the influence of social media and how it's been largely a detriment to dating for young people. And he highlighted this with a reel that was going around, making the rounds on TikTok, of this woman who felt that like her life was over because she had turned 20 and that was it. And she thought, like, oh my gosh, I'm 20, it's over. I mean, what even happens after 20? And I thought, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I'm kicking 20-year-old me's butt. I'm 39 and I've got everything that I wanted for my life when I was 17. It just took me a while to get there. So what? I think this mentality, well, obviously it's caused by, and this is something that the Joker highlighted, it's the downside of social media, because you're basically staring at yourself in a mirror for 20 hours a day, looking for affirmation from strangers, and if you don't get it, you tie your self-esteem to that, and then it fails. And I admit, this kind of happens to me here on YouTube. If I have a video that completely takes off and actually gets me a couple hundred or even thousand views, which is good for my little channel, I think, whoo, awesome, it's finally working. And then if I have a couple of weeks where videos only get 20, 30, 40 views, I'm like, oh crap, what am I doing wrong? I admit that it's a trap that I fall into, but only to a certain extent. And I think this is a consequence of people not having a positive and long-term vision for their life. And they don't have a mindset of appreciating their life at every phase of it. My teens had plenty of ups and downs. I have great memories from my teens. I also have painfully embarrassing ones from my teens. The same can be said for my 20s, and I've definitely got big mistakes in my 30s that I would take back. But it's fine. Like, life is a broad spectrum of experiences, and you can't expect that spectrum to be above average to prodigy in terms of how good you feel. You need to be able to weather the setbacks and the low points and the gut kicks and the failures and the late starts. I'm just now getting to a point where, well, weird way of saying this, where I feel like the books that I'm writing are finally up to my potential level as a creator. But I need to always feel like every book that I'm writing is better than the last one. I need to be at least trending upward or moving upward. I need to be using the good things that I'm learning from every experience to make the next one even better. That is going to require me to fail in different ways than I've failed before, so that I can learn from those new failures and continue sharpening my tool set. And that goes for life in general. When I was living in Henderson, right in the last couple of months that my wife was pregnant before giving birth to our oldest, to our firstborn, I was talking to a buddy of mine named James. He and his wife, she was also pregnant at the same time my wife was, but their daughter was due just a couple of months before my son was. And I texted him after his daughter was born, congratulate him. Hey, what's the difference now? Like, what's different about life other than you just wake up whenever the baby cries and you're on her schedule? And he passed on a good piece of wisdom that had been passed on to me. And he said, just enjoy every phase for what it is. Enjoy the brand new newborn phase. And then soon she's going to be up and opening her eyes most of the time. And then she's going to be crawling. And then she's going to be walking. That was what somebody told him. And it'll be sad when one phase ends and you realize that, oh, well, she can roll now, and I can't just set her down and go do something and come back and she'll be in the same spot. I've got to be more careful. It's the challenge changes and evolves, and we've all got maybe this idyllic vision of what we want our lives to be and our endeavors to be, and we might want to be successful right out the gate, but understand and even embrace that that's not going to happen, and just enjoy every phase for what it is. I really loved having my son be a month old, 6 months old. I loved it when he started saying words, when he learned how to stand, when he took his first steps and they were wobbly and he had his hands in the air like a monkey, and that was how he counterbalanced, and how he was much better at walking backwards than he was walking forwards, and all of that, to now him being strong and articulate. And we had him in ninja warrior training when we were living in Utah, and he was getting ripped. He was getting good at that. It's every little phase, and don't be in such a freaking hurry to push him past it. Don't be in such a freaking hurry to push yourself past it. I'm turning 40 in 3 months, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm enjoying the last months of my 30s, for whatever that's worth and for whatever it means. I decided in my teens that I wanted to live to be 100. And so the progress bar is loading to 40%. In my early 20s, I wanted to be that prodigy author whose debut book sold 1 million copies and everything was going to be just easy and downhill from there. I'm definitely not making all my bread and butter by writing, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep putting my stories out there and figuring out how to reach people, and I'm going to succeed. I think of guys like Christopher Paolini. I talk about him a lot because he's a prime example of this happening to him early, and yet he did the right thing out of it with his life. He didn't immediately push himself into publishing stuff that he didn't believe in or whatever. He was very adamant about doing his story his way. It worked for him. It worked for a majority of his readers. Didn't work for everybody, but who cared? The guy didn't get too big for his britches. He didn't make $1 million and decide that he had to move to LA and live that life or whatever. As far as I know, he still lives in backwater Montana and keeps the life that he wants to live. He values that. As far as I know, he's private about this, but he's at least mentioned on his bio. He's married, he's got kids, he's a family man, he's a husband and father. Fantastic. He's doing all of those things that really matter, and he's turned that early success into a meaningful one. Maybe he was an early bloomer. He's still writing books. He's still having a great time of it all. But I get the impression that he's got that positive vision for his life. He knows what he values, and what he values is good and healthy and has staying power. I think that's the mark of a healthy mind. And what you see on social media is kind of the opposite of that. This idea that you've got to be super successful, you've got to be a prodigy early on, and you've got to look exactly the way that you did at 17 for the rest of your life. Not going to happen. I haven't shared any pictures of this yet, but I've actually been growing my hair out for the last 2 weeks because I've been shaving it for almost 4 years on my head. And I was just kind of curious. I wonder how much of it has gone gray in that time, the amount of stress I've been under. And I'm just reminded of how high my hairline is, and I see pictures of myself in my teens and how I had kind of like Backstreet Boys hair, and now it's looking more like my papa. Oh well, is what it is. I can grow a sick beard. The cool thing is that I liked myself at 20, I like myself at 39, and I'm just going to be a different version of myself. Maybe older, but the idea is that I'm always going to be in some ways better than I was before. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the longevity. Don't worry about being stuck in one phase. Because the one thing I can guarantee you, if you're 15, 20, 30, whatever listening to this, you are not the best version of yourself yet. We're all a work in progress. Don't smash the pause button and say, keep me in stasis from here on out because I'm never going to be better than this. I'm never going to be worth more than this. Yeah, you're going to look different. Who cares? You can keep getting better. And maybe you'll bloom a little bit later than you wanted to. That's fine. Enjoy the process. That's it for now. Go read Late Bloomers by Rich Karlgaard. Very, very good book. I'm probably due to reread it. Let me know what you think. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.